Hello, I am Young Penitent, and you are in my icon corner. Well, today we are going to have on a special guest, my first interviewee. We are going to have Alexander coming on, and I'll bring him on in a moment. This past week, I did go to Vashon Island to All Merciful Savior Monastery to see Abbot Trifon, and I took some video of that trip. So once I figure out what I'm going to do with that video, I will have a special broadcast, which will be dedicated to that particular trip, but I'll have to figure out what I'm going to do with that video first. But today we have another pilgrimage to a very important place in Orthodoxy, and that is Mount Athos. Alexander recently came back from a trip to Mount Athos, and we're going to share his journey with you. So I'm going to bring on the guest here. There he is. Good morning, Alexander.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for coming on. So could you introduce yourself first? First, could you say your name for us, so I don't mess it up?
My name is Alexander Selassie Vajda. Vajda is Hungarian. The J is silent.
Okay. And first, I have to get this out of the way. Are you related to Haile Selassie?
I am a family. Our families are very close. My great-great-grandfather, I believe, was one of his most loyal lords, and my grandmother was raised by him. We kind of come from the same background, so to speak. Selassie in Ethiopian means Trinity. So my name translates to Defender of the Trinity. Haile Selassie, which is his coronation name, means Power of the Trinity. His first name before he was coronated was Ras Tafari, which Ras means Lord. Tafari is his first name, and that's where the Rastafarians get their name from.
Wow, I did not know that. I actually was not expecting you to say that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to say by way of introduction? Maybe your station in life, what you do for work, just so where you hail from. Just
Sure. I was born and raised in Hillsdale, Michigan. My mother was studying right before the revolution in Ethiopia in Hillsdale College, where I was born. Met my father. The revolution came, and they arrested and killed a lot of the males in our family and social status. So I was born, and being that we were some of the first Ethiopians in America, there was no church here. So my mother was married, and I was raised and baptized in a Rocor parish, also near a Romanian monastery where Archimandrite Roman Braga was the father there, and he's rather famous in the Romanian church. I believe there's debates on whether or not he will be considered a saint, but he was an extremely holy man, and that's where I was raised, and my orthodoxy, began. I've always had a love for the church. I'm 42 now, so I've been through college at George Washington University. I joined the Army for 6 years in intelligence, and I work in DC now as a defense contractor. I have a wife from the Republic of Georgia, and 2 kids, a daughter 13, Keitra Selassie, and a son who's 6, Vincent Selassie. So I travel a lot. I love the faith. I have a background in studying religion and theology, philosophy. So,
this means that we might have more in common than I imagined. I actually, my family going back, I'm Armenian, and my forebears came from immigrated to America also during a persecution. They actually, well, before there was the genocide that happened in Armenia in the aughts, not the aughts, but the teens, the 19 teens.
Right.
And my family, my forebears, they saw it coming before it happened. They saw the warning sign, so to speak, which is, I imagine, maybe what people are feeling today in America, how they see how things are going, getting kind of crazy out there. And maybe eventually we could have some sort of persecution against Christians here. But that's what they saw, and they decided to come to America. My grandfather was baptized Armenian Orthodox, and so I guess that means that we both have non-Chalcedonian roots.
Yes,
but I of course, say that again.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you know this, but the Armenians, after the genocide and they were landless, Haile Selassie actually granted Armenians free citizenship to Ethiopia, and a large part of the aristocracy, whether it be the jewelers for the court, I think an Armenian helped set up the first kind of secret or state police for Haile Selassie. So tons of Armenians, and there's a big Armenian church in Ethiopia as well. So they have close ties with my family and in Ethiopia. And I just went to Armenia and Georgia 2 years ago, or right before COVID, maybe it's three years now, and did a mission trip there, helped build a house for a family right under Mount Ararat. And that was just, both countries are just amazing, Armenia and Georgia. But yeah, my grandfather was a and on my grandfather's side, I come from a long ecclesiastical line of people in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and so
Also priests. You had priests in your family.
yeah, not even priests. They're kind of, they're like lay scholars, and so my grandfather actually trained a lot of the bishops and patriarch, and is considered a pretty pious and holy man himself.
Wow.
He helped get the churches back in Jerusalem and Israel after the creation of the Israeli state. The Palestinians had locked us out of some of the properties there. And when he died, actually here in the United States, Israel allowed him to be buried back in the, I believe it's the West Bank, right near Lazarus's tomb.
Ooh, wow. Okay, not to get off track too much, today we are talking about a pilgrimage to Mount Athos. So I understand you went recently. What were the dates of your travel when you were out on Mount Athos?
It was the first week of October.
So very recently.
Yep.
So first of all, I would like to ask you a question about how, like, the practical matters. If somebody else, like, what were the steps you had to take, in terms of visas and so forth? What were the steps you needed to take in case someone out there listening is maybe interested in making a pilgrimage to Mount Athos? What are some resources? What are the necessary steps a person has to take to step foot on Athos?
Well, for all English speakers, I would suggest there's a site called Friends of Mount Athos. They're very detailed on everything you need to do. So in light of what I'm going to tell you, I would highly recommend using that website. But the two major things are, you need to get your hands on a daima. My Greek is terrible. I'm going to mispronounce tons of words going forward. But do you know the name of that term? The daima?
Oh yeah, the diamanticiron or something like that.
Right, which is basically a visa for Mount Athos. And you contact the Pilgrim's Office, which is located in Orionopolis, which is the port from which you sail out of predominantly to get to Mount Athos. As you know, Mount Athos is a peninsula blocked off by land, and the only way in is through the ferries that leave out of a couple places, but Orionopolis is the most likely place anyone is going to come out of. There's a pilgrim office there, so you can call them up, and depending on the dates you want to go, you should give yourself at least a couple months, and then probably more time if you're trying to go during, a particular holiday or special period. They will give you a number and confirm the few days you're allowed to stay on Mount Athos, at which point you then need to contact one of the various monasteries. There's 20 main monasteries that the entire peninsula is divided between, and they have contact emails or phone numbers, and you try to reserve a spot for your night's sleep. And then if you know someone in particular, you might be able to get longer than the few days your visa is for, if that monastery is willing to take you on for more than a day or two. Stays are free. Monasteries do not want your money or request it. Although perhaps I've heard if you were to stay in one place for a week or longer or whatever, then maybe some in-kind donation might be appreciated. But those are the two steps: the pilgrim's office and then reaching out to individual monasteries to secure a bed for the night. They don't want you sleeping or camping on the mountain by yourself. So those are the two big things. As a U.S. citizen, you don't need a visa for Greece, so you can just kind of buy a ticket to, I would say Thessaloniki is your best bet. It's only an hour and a half from Orianopolis by bus or car, so it's probably a lot better than flying into Athens. But if you go into Athens, you just have a longer drive to Orianopolis, and then from there you will get your visa. I had to do a rapid COVID test, and then you buy your ferry ticket, and the ferry proceeds once or twice a day, stopping along the coast at different monasteries, at which point you can get off and start your hike into either the monastery on the port that you're staying at, or you might have to walk, or if you're lucky, catch a ride with someone. There are some transportation services on the mountain, but nothing's guaranteed, so to speak.
Okay. Well, since you're describing stepping foot onto the mountain, we do have some photos prepared for people that Alexander took. So I'm going to share my screen here, and he will be able to walk us through some of his journey. Okay. Here they are that he showed up. So here's the first picture you showed. Where are we here?
This is a courtyard, I believe, of the monastery Gregoriu. It's on the coast. I stopped at 3 major monasteries on the coast. The first one was Xenophontos, one was Gregoriu, and the other one was, I'm blanking.
Did you stay in Newski?
I did not.
Okay.
Not. That I was going to, but my plans changed once I got to Athos. So I didn't tell this part, but I had made plans to stay at 3 or 4 different monasteries on my own. But once I arrived on Mount Athos, I met a group of Greek travelers who were with their spiritual father, an abbot of Saint Arsenios monastery, which is on the mainland, but the abbot's Father Synesios was very respected and well known on Athos, took me in and changed my entire itinerary. So from that point on, I went to where they went, and Neoskeet was no longer a part of the plans at that point. But again, there's so much to do there. There's the big monasteries, then you have the smaller places, and I would say you'd have to do Mount Athos at least 4 or 5 times to get a really great feel of all the varieties of life going on the peninsula. So my trip this time was Monastery Gregoriu, Monastery Xenophontos, Dionysiou, and I stayed at Kutalomo Mosu. I made day trips to several small ones, and one really big one, the Russian Saint Panteleimon. Yeah, so that was. And here is a picture of the capital, Caries. This is kind of like the main strip there. So outside of the monasteries, there's this one kind of capital area where they have some bakeries and souvenir shops, and a kind of a federal building where heads of the monasteries will get together at times to discuss issues pertaining to all of them and things of that nature. There's also a very nice church with a icon of the Theotokos that I think, based on the translation I was getting, was appeared in the shore, but wasn't man-made.
Oh, right.
And it's stunning. It's in the altar area. Only Orthodox are allowed back there to venerate. And
do we have a photo of that?
We do not.
Okay. I do remember coming here to this. I also made a trip to Mount Athos. I think it was maybe 5 years ago or so. And I actually came on a pilgrimage with a group from my diocese. And I was traveling with several priests, a protodeacon, and a bishop. So that traveling with a bishop got us special privileges. For example, when we stayed at Vatopedi, we had an audience with the elder Ephraim, the abbot of Vatopedi, who was a disciple of Elder Joseph the Great, the Hesychast. But I do remember,
that's awesome.
I do remember staying here or stopping in this city and buying an ice cream cone and sitting down there and eating it with our group.
Yeah, it's just a clean, peaceful place. I mean, that's as busy as it gets, I would say, on the entire peninsula. Near there is where St. Paisios, and near I mean from the capital, you start walking down some hills and trails and for a long time, and it gets complicated, and then you come to the small church house that he lived in. It was definitely a trek, and so I understand when he was alive and very popular that those who came to see him had to put in a good deal of effort.
I think we have a photo of that house here somewhere if I can find it. This one.
Yep, there.
This is his hut. This is the hut where Elder Paisios, Saint Paisios lived.
Yep. And again, I don't think, had I not been with the abbot, I was with Synesios, I don't think they would have even let us in that day. They kind of came out and were just whoever the fathers are there now. And when they saw Synesios, then they were like, "Oh yeah, you guys have to come in." And we were able to see where Saint Paisios worshipped and the corner he prayed on, and the things haven't changed at all. So it was pretty special being in that place. And in the backyard, there's a hole there, in a natural kind of hole. I'd heard, many amazing stories of St. Paisios and some of the things he had done, one of which he had made the sign of the cross and proclaimed the Trinity, and a boulder kind of exploded. I was thinking that maybe this hole would be that story. And as Abbot Synesios was speaking, I finally got a translation, and it wasn't that, but it was actually the grave he had prepared for himself. They've left it. He was digging it out, and he ended up passing away, falling asleep in the Lord on the mainland. So, that was interesting.
Who is this person in the photo?
That looks like Abbot Synesios. That was the father who took me in, who's the abbot of Saint Arsenios. And Saint Arsenios, of course, is Saint Paisios's spiritual father. St. Paisios, I guess, had a vision of the monastery that he is now the abbot of on the mainland, and he's been a part of building it because of St. Paisios. So
he was a disciple of the saint?
He's the second abbot, I think, the older abbot, but he was there from the beginning, so
okay.
he was close to St. Paisios as well.
Oh.
And and he was able to take us to a monk who lived by, Monk Gabriel, who lives alone and might best be described as a fool for Christ. Very energetic, very old man who leapt up when we came to the door and said, "Christ is risen," and then proceeded to give us a little chat before he laid down. He was pretty tired. People visit him a lot, obviously, but he went out of his way to speak to us because the abbot was with us.
We do have a video of this monk Gabriel that we'll at least share part of, just so you viewers will know about it. I have uploaded a video of his word. He gave a word to the group, and I have that on my website that we created. So I'll show that at the end of this interview. The word I was looking for is dramatic. A lot of the architecture here for these monasteries is very dramatic.
Oh yeah,
that's how I just describe it.
Dramatic, majestic, beautiful stuff. I mean, you can't put words to how peaceful the place is. Everything seems to be wild and free, but in kind of a perfect working order. The peace of the place, the smells of the fruit and the flowers in the air. I didn't there wasn't a moment while I was there that anything distasteful kind of came into my senses. And then the closer you get to the courtyards and the churches, you'll catch the incense and things like that too. And it's just completely captivating in the most pleasant way. The clean, wholesome you eat. It's a very peaceful place. The wolves, there's wolves there, and they at night will be howling at the moon, and the crystal moon bouncing off the crystal blue sea. Wolves howling at your door. Wild as can be, the sound of a truly kind of intimidating beast, but also in its very natural habitat, and it's quite peaceful. Actually, it feels like a serenade. I don't know if you experienced some of that, but I couldn't. It was more subtle things about the place that I took away. Every monk's hand I kissed, the skin seemed to be so soft and fragrant, and there was something just right about life there.
I do remember. I don't remember the howling, but I do remember the first night staying in the monastery, and I was at St. Anskeet, and we had hiked up a steep incline to get there. And so we ate dinner at a little Kalivi where we were staying, and I went to the monastery to sleep, and they closed those doors, and there was just a finality about it. There will be no entering or exiting those doors after they close at a certain time. They're just so they go by. It's like clockwork there. The way the monasteries operate. So if you're outside of those gates when they close them at night, you're not coming in, and you can't leave either. So if you're a pilgrim out there and you're hiking and maybe you got lost or something, then you'd be out there with the wolves. You'd kind of be out of luck.
That's what they say. I think it's to keep things in working order. I can't imagine they probably wouldn't open the door if you made a big enough stink. But I called it, to your point about the working order of the place. It was as close to the boot camp that I experienced in the Army in terms of, wake up. The order of things was there. Obviously, it's a much more pleasant and peaceful experience than the Army, but even eating, you eat in silence while one of the monks reads out of scripture. You eat in silence. when the elders finish, then everyone is finished. It's just enough time to finish everything before you without necessarily feeling rushed. And I think eating in silence in particular, it was so pleasurable. You really focused on the food. And because you only eat maybe twice a day at most, I think on fasting days, you only eat once a day. There was a pleasure in every bite and every flavor. It really just heightens your senses to the joys of creation, I would say, being in a place like that and the order of it. You wake up 3-4 in the morning for matins, I believe, and then eventually liturgy will start, and the sun starts to pour in these beautiful churches, and culminates in liturgy and reverence, veneration of some of these incredible relics. I saw the hand of John the Baptist that baptized Christ, all sorts of relics from St. Andrew, Luke, John. So, yeah, what can you say? And this picture is actually at St. Arsenios Monastery on the mainland, where Abbot Senasios is the head of. But that was as I'd been there probably 3 or 4 in the morning, and at some point 6, 7, the sun came up, and they had holes just in these particular areas, so it was even more striking. But it's a beautiful way to worship, and I would say you need to be in a decent shape. I've gained some weight and gotten quite lazy since my army days, and someone had mentioned that it was physically taxing, the mountain, but I guess I didn't take that to heart. And so the little climbing we did was really, really kind of brutal at first. And by the end of the week, I was actually getting into decent shape. But I didn't even go to some of these places that you're showing now. This is at the southernmost tip, right around Niasquite, where you had stayed. And things start to get even more dramatic and hard to reach. So those are the places I didn't get to see, but I can only imagine.
The southern end, a little further down from here, is Katunakia, which when I read about when I'm reading books about Mount Athos, it's the most arid, most desolate area. It's for where if you want to be a ascetic, that's where you want to go. Live on dry bread and water. That's like the area of the mountain where you would want to be. Difficult, arid climate.
And straight uphill. I mean, so they bring on a lot of workers to help with construction from the mainland, and I hear a lot of the engineers are just dumbfounded at the fact that some of these places are even standing. They just defy, architectural, knowledge and method. But
yes, because they were built. A lot of these monasteries were built centuries ago, right?
Yeah, and on top of that, so they still are just, they're truly wonders. And the water there you see is, I mean, I've been all over the world, Caribbean and Hawaii, and some nice water, and I've never seen water as clear and as deep as it is around this area. I'm talking, 50 feet, a good 20 easy, crystal clear, fish swimming all over the place. Here's some of the fathers on the ferry. They would come and feed the birds. It's the appreciation for nature and all forms of life, the respect and love emanates throughout the place.
There's your Greek coffee. Don't call it Turkish coffee. Yeah.
No Turkish coffee and no Turkish delights in Greece.
What is the sweet called?
Lukumi.
Lukumi,
yeah.
So they'll bring. Yeah. Can you explain the hospitality that is offered when you arrive?
Right. So as you approach each monastery, the guest house will greet you with Greek coffee, water, perhaps a aperitif of ouzo, and lukumi, which are like a sticky, fragrant sugary treat. Some people call them Turkish delights. They're delicious and they kind of energize you. The ouzo is supposed to cool you on the inside because the liquor is hot, and the sugar of the treat gives you energy. And then there could be crackers and different things as well. Water, obviously.
And what is with the bones here? What is the
Those are called what, estuaries?
ossuaries?
Ossuaries. And the monks, after some time, they take the skulls and they will write the name and the year of the monks on them. And if they were of a higher order or things of that nature, and they keep them as a reminder of the preparation that we all are undertaking is for the next life. Death is to be embraced, and not something we are scared of as Christians, obviously.
I think the cross means a priest or maybe a schema monk. I can't remember, but
right. It's like a high, some kind of precedence.
And I remember this just popped up in my reading recently, that you see this golden hue to this particular skull here, and they interpret that as being evidence that this particular monk lived a good existence.
Oh yeah, so there was another one. I think there's Hugh. Oh yeah, the abbot I was with, he showed us a few skulls. So there's some of them actually show a line, like a suture line. It looks like, but it's in an unnatural. So most skulls don't have it. Most humans don't have it. But on particularly saintly ones, they will actually make it'll make a cross, suture across.
Yep.
Like this one, the one you pointed out, actually, you can see one kind of running on the top there where you don't see them on the other ones. And so there's several things like that. And if you don't speak Greek, you are probably going to miss out on a lot of learning on these type of things. I would suggest you try to search out when you meet the guest house. You can ask for English speaking monks, and there's bound to be probably one or two at most of these places, and perhaps you can get an audience with them and really soak in more of the history and philosophy and just the great stories that are to be told there.
So tell me the story again about you providentially met this group. How did they bring you in? What happened? You had just arrived, right?
Right. So I'd flown into Thessaloniki, figured out a way to get on a bus to Orianopolis. A decent amount of English is spoken in Greece, but not perfect. That morning in Orianopolis, it was kind of a lot of guys are kind of pushy in this coronavirus, the rapid test thing, and they're all speaking Slavic languages and Greeks. And I was kind of an odd man out, but I kind of just followed the group, followed them down to the office, got the visa, then got a ferry, and I'm on the ferry, and my phone is still working. I actually got decent reception along the coast, but I wasn't sure at what point it might die. I didn't have a map. I'm not sure how I'm going to get to these places, how exactly the times the ferry will show up, if I'm capable of hiking long distances. I'm out of shape. So that first night, I'm tired from the journey in general. I'm in Xenophontos. I'm go to liturgy. I have a nice breakfast in the morning. I haven't really engaged anyone too fully. And I decide, I'm going to walk. I heard St. Panteleimon, the Russian monastery, is a short walk away down the coast. I figure I can't miss it. And I'm just going to start walking and see what happens. And I don't get a foot out the door, and a young Greek guy asks me where I'm going. I said St. Panteleimon, and he says, let's walk together. And we start to talk, and he's super fluent in English, proficient anyways, and interested in politics and orthodoxy, which are two of my favorite things to talk about. And so we hit it off, and then he said, my spiritual father is a pretty well-known priest, and he's going to be meeting up with us on the next ferry, and I'm going to ask him if he can stay with us. And I have a feeling we were brought together under the protection of the Holy Mother. This is her mountain, you know. And I said, yes, I know. And he's like, well, I think she's looking out for you, and this is good for all of us. And when his spiritual father showed up, he was more than happy to call and change plans with all the places I had made arrangements with, and then set plans in motion for me to remain with them. And you know, I became really good friends with the group of guys. We're still in contact. I plan on visiting more, helping them maybe come visit America. And Father Synesios of St. Arsenios' monastery is now someone I communicate with and try to help the monastery. And he's assured me anytime myself or friends want to go to Mount Athos that he will pull strings to make sure that isn't, you know, too difficult. So it was, you know, I think you go on these holy trips and you have an open heart and a faith in God. Your guardian angels, the Panagia and Christ will take care of you, you know. And that's what happened for me. So I'm very blessed to have gone, and what seemed like a daunting trip turned into a remarkably easy one where I made tons of friends and connections, and should be something I can rely on for the rest of my life.
I'm making a request right now. Next time you want to go to Athos, you make sure to contact me, and maybe we can go together. Here's a video.
Definitely. I have several people who are interested in as early as sometime, maybe next year, doing a trip. So I'll keep you posted, sir.
Awesome. Okay, so I think after this video plays, we'll exit this particular screen share.
All the monasteries are just so intricately decorated, and you know, scenes out of the Bible that, you know, as someone who's fairly versed in it, you just don't see a lot of. So and some that baffle your mind in terms of, I wonder what this could be depicting, because I'm not 100% sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm familiar with the story there. So there's just a never-ending supply of questions and learning to take place there. And again, you have rocks where certain monks and people have been beheaded defending the faith. And Mount Athos has always stood as a defender of orthodoxy, even against, patriarchs and emperors at times.
Yep, they'll die before they give in. They'll break before they bend.
Yeah.
I'll tell a brief story about something that happened when I was on Mount Athos. This was second day I was there. We hiked from St. Anne's to New Skeet, and I was hanging out in the courtyard. And it's like you said, there's Providence. It's like, kind of like what happened to you. Providential things happen there, and it's more apparent to your spiritual vision when you see it. But there was a guy there. I was sitting there in the courtyard, just sitting in the sunbeam, just taking in the sun a little bit. And the guy was sitting there, also in the courtyard, smoking a cigarette. And started talking to the guy, and a very interesting fellow. And he started telling me the story about how he had just come from a particular elder's hut, his property. And this elder was a direct disciple of Elder Joseph. And Elder Joseph, I had just venerated his grave moments before he was laid to rest there. A very moving experience for me. And so this pilgrim who I'm talking to, smoking a cigarette, is telling me the story how he was just with this elder, and the elder told him, "You can come here, and if you serve me, become my disciple, you can inherit this property." he's offering to make him basically a monk and to live there under the guidance of a direct disciple of Elder Joseph. Now, this is an amazing opportunity. How many Orthodox people in the world would drop everything to go and become a direct disciple of Elder Joseph? And he said, furthermore, that when he dies, he would inherit his hut, his property. And he was telling me he was an old man, maybe in his 80s, and he had a beautiful garden that he kept. He was still working hard like he was a young man. But there was one condition for this to happen, for him to become his disciple. And that condition was that he had to give up smoking cigarettes. What do you think he did? He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He couldn't give up cigarettes. He had to pass on the opportunity of a lifetime because he could not quit smoking cigarettes.
I would like to think there was something more keeping him from that.
Maybe, could be. I mean, he was also describing, life in the world, how he can, interesting things, politics. He can go on the internet and read politics and, things in the world draw him. But yeah, I suspect that the elder, understood what you just said, that there might be more to it. But he's saying he was giving this. So the rest of the brothers at Newski were like, they were treating him, they kind of disdained him. They were like, they didn't like him very much because he was smoking cigarettes. I don't know. But in retrospect, if I had to do it all again, I would have asked him to bring me to the elder to introduce me, because you kind of have to search these people out. They're not going to come to you, and that would have been an opportunity for me to meet the person. It would have been an amazing thing just to meet this disciple, one of the few remaining disciples of Elder Joseph.
Right. I think that's a good point you brought up. I think one of my preconceived notion was I was hoping I was going to just show up on Athos and some illuminated father would, grab my hand and tell me all these wonderful esoteric things, or share visions with me, or I'd see some kind of miraculous event. And I think you have to go with less expectations. The trip will be special regardless, but if you're trying to meet particularly holy monks, you're going to have to travel off the beaten path, because some of the bigger places, especially the first stops along, I would say, the ferry, are very busy. And I don't think that's where you're going to find maybe some of the more ascetic fathers of the island. And so you keep.
But they're there. There are holy men on that. They're hidden. They're in the woodwork, so to speak. But there are holy people on Mount Athos. Very holy people, even today. There's probably saints living there.
Oh, absolutely, and I think Father Sinesius told me, he's like, we just don't necessarily know their names all the time. I mean, they're isolated in different places, and you have to put in a lot of effort to find them.
Okay, so I have one more thing to share with people before we end the stream. And that is this monk Gabriel. So I'm going to share my screen again here and go to my web. This is my web page. This is my young penitent. This is where you go if you want to see young penitent. And this is my webpage, Young Penitent on YouTube. And so here's my live streams, the Complete Idiots Guide series, popular uploads. If you haven't seen this, there's a short Avid Tree Fawn. I would recommend you go to my webpage. He created he helped me to create this short. This is my first short. It got 2,000 views in one day, which is more than I usually get. I usually get 50 or less in a day. So But here down at the end, at the bottom, we have uploads, and I just uploaded this. This is a video that you took and you shared to the Montanica Telegram channel. And by the way, I met Alex at Orthodox Montanica. So that's where I know him from. And he took this video, message from Mount Athos. He took this video of Elder Gabriel, or a monk Gabriel, who lives near where Elder. So I'm just showing people where to go to see this. I don't think I'm gonna play the whole thing because you can go here and see it, but I'm gonna pull it up here. And this is, he's speaking Greek, but we had someone translate it, and I created a video to dub it. So
from all my heart, I want, and my soul, I want to say that blessings of God to be with you and your families and your friends and all, and God to write your names in His big book of life.
So this is a 7-minute long. This is just a great, an awesome, like, this is a very special message for us. You know, I feel so lucky to have this on my on my website, on my YouTube. It's a very important message for us. I think people should, after they're done watching this video, go directly here and watch this next, because it's important. And I don't know, he does mention the stabs in there. There was a question about the stabs. So you want to watch this before YouTube deletes it, because you know, I don't think they're going to, but they might. You know, it's kind of not clear what he's saying, but that is in there. So can you briefly tell us how this came about, this interaction with Monk Gabriel?
He was living near St. Paisios's old place, and Father Synesios was able to get us a private meeting with him. He was pretty tired. He's very old, and he was excited to see the Father who was with us, and kind of jumped up with a boyish charm and love, and Christ is risen, and led us into his little bedroom there and began just to speak to us for a little bit before he was too tired to go on. So Father Synesios said he was one of the more well-known, holier monks of the mountain. So it was a blessing to be in his presence and to feel the passion he had for Christ and his church.
And you said he's considered a fool for Christ.
You know, kind of a fool for Christ. You know, he's by himself, and he isn't as, you know, groomed and serious as some of the other monks look on the island. He, like I said, you know, we usually say, you know, Christ is risen, you know, after
but
Pascha, but it was like, you know, he saw us, and it was that kind of exuberance year round that I think he probably brings to the table. The Fool for Christ moniker is something I think fairly unique to Orthodoxy. I know the West doesn't really have anything like that. It's kind of a person who, outside of the norms of the day, is totally dedicated to Christ and the church in a way that seems silly, I guess, to the world.
Right. They don't a fool for Christ. I think I should probably do a stream on this. Actually, I think I will. But the fools for Christ, they don't pay attention to custom. So the things that, you know, that they're not really worried about what people think about them exactly.
Right.
And they're not insane. They have complete, you know, control over their mental faculties, but they might even feign illness in order because if you feign illness, people will disdain you, and then they will be given humility from people. They use it as a way to gain humility by making people think less of them, actually, because maybe they're holy, so they might have a temptation to be proud. So if people think, oh, he's just crazy, that would help them to control their pride and stay humble.
Yeah, I think there was a great movie, The Island, done by Russians. It's called The Island, and it centers around a monastery and a monk there who is considered a fool for Christ, and even the other monks don't understand why he does some of the things he does, and it takes a little time in order to realize that he's just taught or something very deep to them, or has even foreseen the future and prophesized things. So I highly recommend that movie if you haven't seen it, for a great example on
Yes,
the fool for Christ
that's an excellent movie. Good. I'm glad you brought that up. So, okay. Thank you so much, Alexander. I can't thank you enough. This has been a great stream. I'm about to end it here, but I want everybody to go to my channel and watch that video immediately after the end of this stream. So you watch it before it gets taken down, because it's a message from Mount Athos and it's important for all of us to hear. So, do you have any closing words?
I just want to say thank you for having me on, and God bless you in your work. I keep up with it as much as I can, and keep it up, brother. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Okay, that is the show for today, and we'll see you all next time.
God bless.
Young Penitent is out.